Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 11 of the Big Boys Pod. Coming at you on this holiday Thanksgiving week. So if you got some travel ahead of you, or if you're just trying to get away from your family on Thursday, something like that, throw this on, give this a listen, and just sharing some Big Ten news here. We're getting into rivalry week. Basketball season's heating up. You got that Maui Invitational
Yes,
ongoing
we
right
do.
now. No Big Ten teams
Always
there this
fun.
year, but yeah, always a fun one. We're excited to come at you with a little bit of a mailbag to each other type episode here that we'll get into. First of all, though, Coach Cole, how have you been this week?
Oh man, we are good for sure. I appreciate you asking. Right, we're finally back. It was a little bit under the weather this past weekend. If you've seen the episode of SpongeBob where he gets to the suds, felt right there with him. So that's where I was, but um, made it back. Just like any good Big Ten team was gritty about it.
hmm
Um, No, man. The holidays are coming up. Holidays can be a weird time for a lot of people, can be a good time, can be a tough time for people. Just want them to know that this is a great outlet for, like you said, when your uncle or whoever starts losing at the table, just let him know that he don't know ball and you do.
Yeah, hopefully we can help you out with that too. Give you some talking points.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, speaking of talking points, a little bit different of a setup tonight. I mean, as we keep trying out new formats and as the year comes, right? A couple questions we want to throw at each other for discussion tonight. Um, and I
The other
got one
thing,
here to.
before we start, we don't know each other's questions either, so this is gonna be off the dome here. Uh,
That's true.
I don't
Yeah,
know what you got
there's no,
coming. You
yeah,
don't know what I got coming, and we'll just freeform this a little bit, which I'm excited about.
there's no pre-reads on any of this. But yeah, so first one I got here, Big Ten now being as big as it is, right?
hmm
And I mean, realistically, we can say we've seen the whole season. I mean, or almost the whole season. We have an idea, especially now. Literally at this point, we're as we're filming, we have a picture of what could happen in the playoffs
hmm
now. Um, so my question, I guess, to you is: has the Big Ten produced the best parity in a conference we've seen in the country this year? And if so, is the Big Ten the marquee? Is it what we say it is every week, which is the place to be watching football,
hmm
the best product?
Oh, see, that's a good one. I mean, I think at the top, when you look at the top four teams, which, like you alluded to, college football playoff rankings just came out like an hour ago. We're doing this Tuesday night. You got four teams again in the top 10. Indiana took a bit of a spill after that loss
Yeah,
to Ohio State, but number one in the country, Oregon, number two, Ohio State, number four, Penn State. It's been like that for a few weeks now. So at the top, is this like, I mean, parity and the upper echelon of college football? Absolutely, I think. I mean, having three of the top four on lock is huge. After then, there's only one other team in the rankings. Illinois came in at 23 this week. I think they were 24 or 25 last week because
you're
both their teams are
25
25.
last week. Them,
Yeah,
yeah,
and pulled out that win there versus Rutgers. So they're up to 23 this week. So in the middle of the conference, parity wise, oh my, I mean, I think there's the middle of the conference after that first four. You go 10, 12 deep of teams that I think any one of those teams can beat any one of the other teams. And we've seen that throughout the season as we've been reviewing games
hmm
that we weren't expecting. You know, we previewed some games earlier. It's like, oh, you know, this is a game that we think maybe USC or a Michigan or a Washington or an Iowa is going to clean house. And ended up losing to teams like Michigan State or to Minnesota or to Rutgers and you name it. And all of those teams that they could beat anybody. And I really like how those teams could stack up out of the conference. I mean, we've seen earlier in the year Michigan State play really well out of conference. We saw Rutgers play really well out of conference.
yeah.
Um, you know, I don't
You were
remember
really
all the
high on
games.
Rutgers at the start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They started off 4-0, kind of took a slide from there, but you know, still sitting at bowl eligibility right now, and on the precipice of a winning season if they kind of pull out a couple more games here. Um, so yeah, no, I mean, I, it's such a competitive conference. I think people maybe outside of the Big Ten sphere have been kind of blinded by the fact that you know you see these teams at the top and nobody really after them, and you think, oh, you know, the Big Ten kind of sucks, this or that. But it's like I like Rutgers in a matchup versus some of these ranked teams from non-Big Ten conferences. I mean, you got like 4 or 5 Big 12 teams kind of in the bottom half of the rankings this week. It's like I like Rutgers in a matchup versus Kansas State. I like a team like Iowa played Iowa State. They slid at like 18, I think, this week. That game came down to 1 point, last second field goal, and Iowa is not even close to the rankings right now. So I think that really speaks to the depth of this conference. And I forget the exact wording of your question, but I mean, if we're talking about the conference being deep, conference is deep. Are all those teams natty competitive? Not at all, but I mean, not a lot of teams are. But if you're talking bowl wins and that sort of thing, I could see the Big Ten having a really good winter here. What are your thoughts?
I think, I mean, you brought up a couple of points, I guess, that I didn't really think about when I drafted this question, but there were a lot of like tight games. And when I think about a game that comes off the top of my head, I mean, Purdue, we ratted on them all season long, but they had that overtime loss to Illinois.
Yeah.
Right. There's games where Penn State goes out to play USC and beats USC, but that's like a back and forth game. There's a lot of close games.
Dude, look at last weekend, that Minnesota game.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
It took them really. I mean, it was that fourth down that they went for with like 3 minutes left that really closed that game out. I mean, that could have easily gone the other way.
And I mean, like, if you listen every week, how many times have we talked about where we're like, oh, well, this game, like, actually the score, it was inflated because of this play or that play, but realistically, this was a tight game if you're watching the whole thing, right? And there's a lot of nose to the grindstone football. And so, yeah, I do think the parity is great. I do think some teams probably lacked in that. I mean, you're going to have bottom teams. Teams are going to underperform, under-execute no matter what. You can't control all the things that happen. You can only really move forward from those things. But regardless, I do think the parity, I mean, having the amount of teams in the league that are at least going bowling, let's count right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 in the Big Ten, you got 11 teams right now who are bowl eligible.
Possibly 2 more this weekend.
Incredible.
Yep.
Incredible edible eggs. Brought to you by the Midwest, brought to you by Big Ten. Quack, quack, baby. That's good stuff. That's my question. I don't know. There's not much more. We can harp on that all day long, but what's something you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I guess last thing on that, since I was talking about the kind of the meat in the middle of the conference, there's 10 teams that are either 5-3, 4-4, or 3-5 in conference play. And that's, I mean, those are teams that it's net 1 or 2 games, and you're a 5-3 conference team to a 3-5 conference team. And like you said, a lot of these games have been close. If those close games flip, 1 score later, something like that, I mean, those teams all have kind of beat up on each other, and it's been really hard to kind of separate them. The 2 5-3 teams, Illinois and Iowa. But I mean, watching Iowa, there's easily a couple games they could have lost there. Illinois had a couple games they could have won and maybe been in that top echelon, or that overtime game versus Purdue. They're 4-4. That looks a lot different. So, yeah, I mean, it's a deep conference for sure. So, yeah, great question. I like that one. So I got my first one for you here. It's the second one I wrote down. I want to save my first one as my last one, but it's rivalry weekend. A lot of these teams, everybody's at 11 games right now, and you save a lot of these big rivalry games for Thanksgiving weekend. Holiday weekend, people are off work, all eyes on. It's a fun time for a lot of these games.
Sure. Which people can go to the games.
What was that?
People get a chance to actually go to the games with family and stuff.
Absolutely.
And alumni.
Yep. Of the rivalry weekend games, and just kind of these, maybe not necessarily this weekend, or it could be one of this weekend's games. What game are you always most excited for? And which of these rivalry weekend games is always one where you're like, oh, I got to tune in at least a little bit and kind of see what's up here? Or if it's one of the games this weekend, based on some of the storylines of the season, what are you excited for in rivalry weekend?
Good question. I mean, to be honest, and I hate being such a homer pick, bringing up the Iowa-Nebraska game, because I was looking for, and I am looking forward to the Wisconsin-Minnesota game, but after watching Wisconsin last week and just kind of, I mean, I'm in reality, it doesn't really matter in my head what happens there. Um, the Ohio State Michigan game could be super exciting, but also we know what happens when Ohio State walks out feeling good.
Hmm.
And that's like literally the one game they lost, they still looked great, right?
Yep.
So, um, two answers here for you on here. Pseudo answer is the Fresno State UCLA game because UCLA is playing that. I don't know if that is like a rivalry
No, I don't
for
think.
them.
I think it's like a weird scheduling thing because USC
Okay,
gets Notre Dame this year.
well, I love that. Anyways, that's happening this week. No, but the reality is the Iowa Nebraska game. The fact that that's the Black Friday game.
Hmm.
Um, like it, it's the whole world to Nebraska fans when they win this game.
Hmm.
It really is. And it means a lot for Iowa fans too, to be honest, just to be able to kind of shut that noise up. And right now, if they lose that game, then they both be 7-5. And then Nebraska fans are walking around feeling a lot better about their season when in reality, they've probably underperformed for all the hype they've had all year long. Um, and I don't know. I want Dylan Raiola to succeed. I think he has found some success. But I mean, Caleb Johnson just broke Hawkeye running back history last weekend with that 21st rushing touchdown.
Hmm.
What makes me think he can't hit 25 with an official number against playing like a Nebraska team? So it's going to be really fun to watch that game for sure. Um, I think watching the Michigan State game earlier this year too was kind of exciting, just because both those teams are kind of just hot potatoes, man. We had no idea what was going to happen with
Yeah.
them from one week to another, and kind of just growing on Aiden Childs. And I think that game next year, if I can look forward to a real like one, the Michigan State game next year, that'll be a fun game to watch.
Yeah. Hopefully those teams kind of turn the corner after get another offseason for first year head coaches there and develop some guys and all that sort of thing. That could
Yeah.
definitely be a fun one. I know I've talked a lot this year about thinking this Michigan State team could start to be a wagon a year or two from now and kind of putting the pieces
Mm-hmm.
together this year. Um, yeah, I mean, you touched on the Minnesota Wisconsin game a little bit. I actually kind of am excited for this one this year, just if only because I believe Minnesota's now won that 3 years in a row or 2 years in a row, something like that. Which
Yeah.
throughout our lifetimes, Wisconsin's really dominated this series, and go on and on about PJ Fleck and the serious program he's built up there in the Twin Cities and all that. But winning
Yep.
this
Yep.
game more often than not the last few years is a huge step for them. They had the chance to shut Wisconsin out of a bowl game this weekend, since they're sitting at 5-6 after losing to Nebraska last week. So I think just
Mhm.
from the standpoint of Wisconsin keeping their bowl eligibility streak alive, it's close to 30 years, I think, at this point. Is kind of a fun storyline for that one. And if Minnesota wins, I mean, they're already bowl eligible, but getting a winning record, no matter what happens, sitting at 7-5, likely 8-5, given what we know about PJ Fleck. But that could be a fun one. And then Washington, Oregon. This is I forget what they call it. It might just be like the big game or something like that. Not to take away from Michigan and Ohio State, but this is a new one for the Big Ten with these two teams added. I know there's a lot of bad blood out there on the Pacific Northwest coast between these two teams, and Washington knocked them off twice last week, or last year, sorry. So,
Yeah.
and Oregon on the precipice of carrying a number one ranking into the playoffs. Washington's maybe looking to knock them back down a few pegs if they win, and Oregon's probably looking for revenge. So I think that'll be a fun one this weekend. But yeah, there's some good ones. It's a tough
That
call.
is a good one. And that's the nightcap, right?
Hmm.
That's a 6:30 game. So honestly,
Saturday,
I
yeah.
mean, I I'll be tuning in on that one for sure. I think that'll be a fun one to watch. And I forgot that game was kind of a big game last year.
Hmm.
So that kind of actually leads into my next question, if
Perfect.
possible.
Yeah.
Uh, Talking about the West Coast, talking about this edition we've had, and I've been positive on it. I'm not sure what your final thoughts are so far. I think it's been nothing but good for it. I mean, and I don't think there were that many naysayers, but there's always naysayers. And when you're on social media and stuff, I mean, super easy to find people who spend time all day like just hating. So
Mm-hmm.
you can do that, especially on the league, especially on conferences. Um, but I think it's been really good. I think on top of that, it's brought some really good coaching in. Dan Lanning right now has to be, in my opinion, the hot button name in coaching, in the world of coaching. It, is there someone who beats that right now? Or, in my opinion, is he the guy to beat? Is he the most cutting edge guy right now? I mean, it feels almost like, and why I say this, it feels almost like Sean McVay when the Rams start having their first really good few years, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, wait a second. I mean, I know, like, we knew who Sean McVay was. He's been around, but man, now he's really cooking
Mm-hmm.
type deal. It feels a similar momentum, in my opinion, to that. And I don't know if you can think of there's someone else. I mean, I know Georgia's Georgia. It is what it is, but like, is there a guy to beat, or is Dan Lanning kind of at the trail of this pack right now?
Yeah, I mean, coaching in the Big Ten. I mean, there's a couple guys with a lot of tenure at this point. Obviously, Ferentz, like you're 26 here,
Yeah,
but Iowa's in a much different place as a program than Oregon is. Harbaugh left um, from Michigan.
yeah,
Franklin's, about a decade here now at Penn State, but seems to have not quite gotten over the hump in the same way that Lanning kind of already has or is about to this season.
yeah.
Um, and then you got Ryan Day is the only other name of like a guy that's got some big achievements under his resume. But I think I'm going to go with Lanning's the kind of the coach right now in the Big Ten. It's only like his third year there, so it's still so early. But
It is. It is.
what I think separates him from a guy like Ryan Day is Ryan Day succeeded Urban Meyer, who won a national championship at Ohio State, kept them into the playoffs, every 3 years or something like that in his tenure there at Ohio State. He steps down. Ryan Day takes over after being the offense coordinator and assistant head coach there. And to Ryan Day's credit, has kept the wagon rolling. I mean, this is a team number 2 in the country, 10-1. Definitely favored this weekend versus Michigan to be 11-1, get an
Yeah.
at-large spot in the playoffs. So nothing against Ryan Day, and he's also made the playoffs in 2020 on his own accord with that Ohio State team.
As hard as we are on him, he gets his job done.
He does, yeah. The last few years versus Michigan have kind of been a monkey on his back, but a really good opportunity to win for the first time in like close to 6 years versus Michigan now this weekend.
Yeah.
But where you look at where the Oregon team was when Lanning took over, way different spot. I mean, they had a lot of coaching turnover after Chip Kelly went to Mark Helfrich and kind of continually got worse under him. Was it Taggart there for like one season? And he left for Florida State. Had Cristobal there for a few years. He left. Just kind of seemed unstable, and this team wasn't quite fulfilling the potential that we had seen, in that late 2000s, early 2010s era. Here comes Lanning, and 11 wins last year. The only loss to the college football playoff runner-up, and undefeated this season on the verge of number 1 seed in the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm on the Lanning train. His
Yeah.
attitude's great. I know you've talked a lot about that, these Dan Lanning moments and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the style of football he plays. It's not flashy in the same way that Chip Kelly was and you've gotten used to with Oregon. Still flashy, but still very hard-nosed and very Big Ten-esque the way that defense plays, which I think there were some question marks about them joining the conference in the offseason. So give me Dan Lanning, best coach in the Big Ten.
Alrighty, yeah, guy to beat. I mean, I'm not going to argue it, and I think I could have argued it if Hoosiers handled the Buckeyes, but that's not how things went, so I
No.
can't. But if it was, I would just say, show me the proof. But smoke too many Signettis, and eventually it's caught up on you, right? And that's what happened.
They looked good in that first quarter, man. It was tough. It just started falling apart from there. I mean, full disclosure, I was rooting for Indiana just to keep that Cinderella story going. It seems to, I mean, they're still in the playoffs if they started today with this week's rankings, but
best of all time in Bloomington right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't complain.
Nope.
Good
Um,
stuff.
I think they could get used to winning down there. They would like to get used to the winning, and the new contract he's got, maybe they will here in the next few
Oh
years.
yeah, yeah. He's not going anywhere.
Moving on to my next question for you, and this kind of ties into Dan Lanning in Oregon as well a little bit, and looking ahead to Big Ten title weekend a couple weeks from now. If you're an Oregon fan and you've locked up your spot to Indy, you're sitting this weekend. Definitely want that win versus Washington, but know that you're playing in Indianapolis regardless of what happens. So you're kind of looking at who you're matching up with. The way it's sitting right now, if Ohio State gets the win, they'll be there. If they lose, Penn State wins, Penn State gets there. Both of them lose. Indiana can sneak in. But Ohio State kind of controls their own destiny here. If you're an Oregon fan, do you want that Ohio State rematch? Obviously, you took them down in October there. That highly hyped matchup that we were talking about a lot going into it. Or does someone else want the smoke? Do you want maybe see an Ohio State loss, and do you want to match up against Penn State? Do you want to match up against Indiana, or are you like Ohio State? We got you once, we'll get you twice. What's your thoughts if you're an Oregon fan?
I think I think first off, that's a really good question because how you prepare for a team that you've already played against, especially a team that maybe you beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Compared to a team that you lost. As truthful as you want to be, you might be looking at that film in one way or the other, right? And you got to be super critical of yourself and look at the black and white and those things. And I'm sure they are, right? They're the number one football team in the country. There's a reason why they are good week in, week out like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to see a Penn State matchup against Oregon. I don't really. I think that those ships have sailed. I think the rematch is what I want, and I think that's kind of what sports need right now is a fun, exciting rematch. I mean, the rematches we had of the national championship game this year, right, were duds when we watched those just because they were, and like we've talked about, very different teams or whatever. The world got a very bad Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight. I mean, like, but you know what I mean? Like, we're not getting these second bouts, these sequels, these things that are really like something to grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
And that first game, man, because newsflash, I audibled my third question, but my third question that I had written down on here was kind of about one of the best moments of the year in the Big 10
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like I had it circled. Mine was going to be the Oregon win against Ohio State. Just that whole game, watching that was incredible, and that was like the most fun. I like, except for week one, I think that's the most fun I've had. Minus watching some games with some friends, right? So like, that was super cool. I want the rematch. I want to see that happen. However that happens, I'd rather it not happen. Like in like I don't know, like I in the final game of the season, I'd like to see Oregon run through a few more teams too, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll be interesting to see how Boise State finishes off their season and things. And there's still a lot of other teams that have a lot of say in this, but I'd like to see Ohio State get a chance to punch up again because that they'd be preparing like crazy. I mean, you'd see some insane ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the rematch would be really fun, and that's kind of why I wanted to ask that one. Is the rematch what the people want, or do we need to test out some of these other teams? But I agree with you. I think the rematch would be a lot of fun. I just kind of when you started talking about how you wanted it, I was kind of trying to visualize, when they pan the camera down into Lucas Oil there, and you get the little graphic that comes up, Ohio State, Oregon. You get the trophy in the middle, and Gus Johnson yelling and screaming about, both these teams. I think that's a moment that we play the game for, and would be a lot of fun. So I'm with you. You want to see the best teams play each other, and at this point in the season, these are two best teams in the Big Ten for sure. Couple more games here to prove that, but that would definitely be a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, watching the Oregon Duck and then like Brutus the Buckeye mascots out in Circle
Yeah,
City
that's a good
battling each other,
it's a good mascot matchup. Also,
right?
it'll be after Thanksgiving. Getting into the more Christmas season, you got the red versus the green. Get the Christmas
Yeah,
colors. It's almost meant to be.
old guard versus the new guy on
Yeah,
the street.
yeah,
It's all starting to come together.
yeah.
So
It'd be cool if
yeah,
they did. I know they do it for USC, UCLA pretty often. They do the red versus the blue because it's contrasting enough. If they let them do the
mhm,
green versus red. Although that'd be like a colorblind person's worst nightmare trying to watch that game.
that's true. You know what? Good thinking. Good thinking.
But it would look cool.
That's all right. Break out the all whites then, Ohio. You heard it.
Yeah.
um, good stuff. All right. My turn.
Yeah. What
One
you
more
got?
question. Yeah, is that okay? Well, so yeah, I kind of audibled on this,
No, all
but
good.
speaking of audibles, recently here, and I just had it up, but we've seen some big flips in college football. We saw Julian Lewis leave, going from USC to join Deion Sanders in Colorado,
Hmm.
5-star QB recruit. Good for him. Same thing, same day. Bryce Underwood was LSU guy. The guy in the video with Brian Kelly doing the stuff. If you've seen that, I mean, brutal. Can't imagine being in that situation. And
Hmm.
because of that, we see him flip to Michigan, right? So I know we live in a world. It's just a whole new landscape with the NIL, with opportunities, with individuals making true names for themselves in the sport, and I think that's a
Hmm.
good thing. I think honestly, everyone's seen this turn out better than they thought. That's not really what my question is. What my question is, if you are a 4-star, 5-star recruit, you're looking at the landscape of things right now.
Hmm.
You can commit anywhere you want, right? What are a couple teams in the Big Ten that you're taking seriously, and what are a couple of teams outside the Big Ten that you would think actually that's why I'd want to commit there instead of a Big Ten school?
Ooh, see, that's tough. I think a
It
lot of it comes down to what an individual player kind of wants from their college experience.
totally, yeah, I guess that's a really loaded question
Yeah.
too. But just I guess in terms of, let's just say, dude, if you're and we can paint this picture 100 different ways, like you're saying, but it would be a really exciting time to be a guy who is walking into Indiana right now,
Hmm.
or a guy who's looking to revamp things in Michigan, right, or
Hmm.
take over. But and we saw that literally happen with these quarterbacks. So I didn't know if there was a something, or if you saw some writing on the wall, or if you just think it's just what it is now, and we'll always see kids flip and they come and go, and the transfer portal is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, kids have always flipped. You know, you go back a lot of moments on signing day with the hats. And they do a little
Yeah.
fake out, and those are some of the all time clips.
Oh yeah,
Faking out mom. You told mom you're going to play for state and you're going to tech instead, something like that.
dude,
Uh,
brutal.
but in the past, a lot of those switch ups have been like a coaching change. You know, you were being recruited by so and so coach. He goes somewhere else, and that was the guy you really wanted to play for. You
Sure.
made that connection there. You know, in other instances, it was maybe as you got closer to that final moment, another team kind of. You watch your senior year, you're watching college ball, and you see a team start playing in a certain style or something like that you think suits you, is going to be the best fit for you, best chance to get to the next level, that sort of thing. You make that sort of switch. I think all that's still there, but now, like you mentioned, you have the NIL that just really uh, kind of is an additional layer of complexity in these decisions for these high school kids. And with that, the transfer portal, where it's not necessarily a permanent or as permanent of a decision as it was before. You know, in the
Hmm.
past, you transfer, you got to sit out a year unless you've already graduated. So you lose a year, get a little rusty, that sort of thing, if you want to switch. Whereas now, I mean, we're seeing guys opt out already and enter the portal, looking for a greener pasture next season. But if I'm a 5-star and like Underwood, like you mentioned, I mean, we saw so many 5-stars in the last 2 decades really congregate in programs like Alabama and at programs like Florida State under Jimbo Fisher and kind of in those
Mhm.
Jameis Winston years.
Mhm.
And then even Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. In the past, you go back even a little further and the talent that USC had under Pete Carroll. And a
Yeah.
big reason for that was those were the coaches. And we'll talk about basketball later, but I just thought of the basketball example was guys going to Kentucky to play for Calipari. Those were the coaches that were going to get you to the next level more than any other coach. And you want to collect that big paycheck, make it to the NFL, make it to the NBA, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Whereas
Yeah.
now, in a way, you can get that paycheck now where I think the NIL is already going to be a big thing. It's going to become even bigger when Michigan's promising a guy like Underwood was $12 million or something like that in NIL
Yeah.
money.
Right.
So I
It
don't know.
does change things.
It does. Michigan for a quarterback, the job's open for your taking based on what we've seen there. You're going to be coached by Sharon Moore as offensive coordinator. We've seen the type of offense he can put together, so you know that you're in good hands offensively if you go to Michigan. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to chase the NIL money. Or do you chase the playing time to then prove yourself, get the NIL money still in college, and just have the freedom to bounce around? I mean, look at Dylan Gabriel, started at UCF, smaller tier program, jumped to Oklahoma, play a couple of years there, increase his value. Oklahoma doesn't look like a national championship contender. He's already earned a bit of his bag, has a chance to make even more going to, play for Uncle Phil and go out to Oregon and put together a national championship team this year. I think that'll become a lot more common too. Not necessarily your question, but I think you'll see, you've seen what Indiana could do this year. Who knows who they can get in the portal this offseason, if they're a couple pieces away.
Yeah. No, and to be honest, my question kind of devolved into a lot there, and I think it's right. But I think the main point there is that guys are going to strike while the iron's hot, and the reality is they can strike sooner now and more often. And so that's a good thing. And I think it's going to be good for whoever. And just want to see everyone succeed. Want to see guys succeed in the right places. Obviously, it sucks when anyone commits to a school and then things don't go that way.
Yeah.
So good luck to everyone on their commitments and their transfers and everything. And all that matters is what happens in between the lines.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to see these guys get paid now. I mean, it's still such a wild west, but
dude, it's incredible. It's awesome.
I always talk about it in like relation to like when they do like lockouts in the pros and like you don't get to see ball for a little bit. It's like it's the owners versus the players all the time, and it's like who's putting up a picture of Jerry Jones on their Jerry Jones poster or Robert Kraft poster or something like that. It's like, no, you put up the Tony Romo poster, you put up the Tom Brady, but it's the players that you cheer for, it's the players you watch for.
Yeah.
Have them get their bag. And these college kids, I mean, when I was on campus, I'm sure when you were on campus, those guys are so busy, they don't have a chance to even earn a little bit of cash. You can't work a job or anything like that. It's like,
no, for real. And
putting their lives and their health at risk and all that sort of thing. And the time it takes up, it's like, give them some bread. Like, why did it take so long to get here? And then now we're here. Like I mentioned, the Wild West thing. Maybe some of these guys are earning maybe too much and the risk reward's not there, but like, I'm not going to complain a guy like, was it, DJU who went to Florida State and didn't really play that great, but kind of chased the money. It's like, get it while you can. I mean, you're the reason people watch. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. And last note on that from my perspective, like as this continues, I think it's important to remember the history and watch these videos and listen to the recounts of stories of guys who played and got paid nothing or put on all these things, right? And I mean, like Reggie Bush is a great example, but there's a million examples of these guys who literally were getting it like and not even breaking even and like trying to like sneak extra meals and stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy. And so good for all the guys who are getting it how they can. And we're glad to see that things are hopefully getting better across the Big Ten. But yeah, that's my question. You got one more, right?
I got one more for you. Yeah. Okay. We've already talked coaches a little bit with Dan Lanning and some of the kind of tenured guys in the Big Ten. But flipping that a little bit to these guys just starting their tenures. We had 5 first-year head coaches in the Big Ten this year. Indiana with Curt Cignetti, Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, Jed Fish up in Washington, Sharon Moore, who I mentioned in Michigan, and Deshaun Foster out at UCLA. Of these first-year head coaches, who's still got the most to prove? Who, if you're a fan of one of these programs, you're the athletic director, and you made that hire, who's the most nervous that they maybe didn't get the hire right? And on the other hand, who do you think knocked it out of the park? There's maybe a clear answer there, but maybe you disagree with Coach Signetti and you think one of these other guys is really going to be the home run we look 5 years from now?
No, Signetti, yeah, I mean, Signetti's awesome, and he's made his case, and that's a good one. I think a couple ways to start this. First off, UCLA still has a lot to prove, and they started playing way better football the second half of their season.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they were losing some of these games, they're starting to put together actual drives. We were seeing them, like, at the start of the year, we couldn't beg for basketball season to start for UCLA. And then all of a sudden, they're putting stuff together. Ethan Garbers is a big boy of the week, and we're singing a different tune, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, they've had a better second half of the season maybe than USC has. I don't know. Like, that would have been a good question. But so yeah, I think he has more to prove. I think he has. It's not a hot seat or anything of that nature. It's just this is going to take a few years, and let's get some more guys out here under him. In terms of job and maybe not picking the right guy, and I say this just because of the school it is, I think Michigan is impossible to be a coach at. I just think it's too hard.
I agree with
And
you.
for one reason or the other, you can break it down, but there's always big asterisks next to it, being, are you winning the certain games? Are you winning the game against Ohio State, right? Are you bringing guys in still, which, I mean, honestly, they're seeming to do that, as we talked about, so that's good. But they're losing huge games at the big house, and they're getting stomped on, and then they have average days, and then they beat teams, and so it's just like, it's been weird. I think they're probably holding their breath a little bit, and hoping that people just kind of get ready for this next season and the hype around it and the hype around the recruiting class coming into Michigan. But no, man, I think the two hires that got right are for sure IU, for sure UCLA. I think Washington, let's give them a few more years. Who's to see? Let's get their guys in. Michigan State, I think, is trending upwards. I'm fine with him staying around. I think he's gonna continue to do good things. But yeah, Michigan might be on the back pedal, man. Not back pedal, but you know, I mean, playing a little like they have something to prove there for sure now.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. When I put the question together, this was my first question, and when I mentioned earlier, I wanted to say this one for the end. I thought this was kind of an interesting discussion as we've talked about all these teams throughout the year. When I put it together and I put the teams and the coaches there, so I didn't forget any of them, I was looking at the list. I'm like, these all seem like really good hires. I mean, you mentioned Foster at UCLA. I mean, they're kind of the weakest of these 5 teams this season, but they had a tough hand that they were dealt kind of in the offseason with the other coaches. I mean, they completely rebuilt their coaching staff, lost a lot of guys through the portal, and had to reload there. That, you know, the kind of chips were stacked against him, and he's made the most of it. He's an alum there, you know, coaching at his alma mater. Seems like a good fit from that standpoint. And if you've seen
that can be hard too.
It can. That is a lot of weight.
There's a double-edged sword to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that double-edged sword, I mean, I thought these were all really good hires, but one of them is Sharon Moore, and he's not an alum of Michigan, but he's been on that staff now for years. Where I think he's done good with what they had available this year. And then Kurt Campbell's their OC, and there's a lot of talk in the Michigan fan base that, you know, make a change there and we'll feel a lot different. You know, Moore was the OC there under Harbaugh, and they had some great offenses. So it's, you know, he's got a good offensive mind. That's kind of what I mentioned earlier.
They also have JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, that helps.
And all these other good players. But they still have good players. I'm not going to.
Yeah. It just seems tough because he's known yet unknown commodity in a way, where it's like, you can always go put back on him. It's like, hey, you were on these winning teams. Like, why aren't you figuring out? That I think it's like you said, it's an impossible place to coach at unless you're winning those games, unless you're back in national championship contention within a few years here. It will seem like a disappointing hire, even though where we've seen Michigan in the last 50 years, 2 natties. Schembechler won a lot of Big Ten titles and a lot of Rose Bowls, which is kind of the peak of the sport back then. And then from there, Carr got a natty in 97, and then it took him almost 30 years to win the next one, and a lot of down years in between there, and a lot of coaching changes. Where it's a tough place to coach, high expectations, and I like Moore as the hire. I mean, he was the interim in a lot of those games when Harbaugh was suspended last year and got the job done.
Right. Yeah.
And
that says something too. I mean, but I think to kind of speak on what you're saying and why it's so impossible is how quick will people forget that he was a part of those staffs that went to win national championship, right? Like, will that give him a little bit more of a leash, or does it need to be upper echelon all the time? When in reality, I don't know. Michigan's Michigan, but they're not always upper echelon, whether they want to be or not. Like, they have down years, and that's just who Michigan. Like, whether the idea of a Michigan man and all these things, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking of. Is like, he's a Michigan man, so to speak, and they did that with Brady Hoke, 10 years ago, and look how that turned out. So it's like, and Harbaugh was a Michigan man, but he was such a known commodity with what he did in the NFL, and at Stanford, it's like, this is sure to be a home run eventually, and it was.
Well, and I'd argue too, before a Michigan man at that point, dude, he's just a Harbaugh.
Yeah, yep. Harbaugh last night. Did you watch that?
I didn't. I was a little busy.
I saw it when it was on at the gym, and I kept on looking, but I didn't really watch too closely. Lamar did the Lamar Hezzy. I do know that. I saw the clip. It's pretty sick.
Another.
Nice. Yeah. Last thing on this, and then we'll chop it up with basketball here to end the show. Who's to say Harbaugh left? He went to San Diego or Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Chargers.
Hey,
San Diego in my heart.
That's Tomlinson's team until someone tells me different.
Yeah. He up and left, where it's like, who knows? I mean, they could be sitting at 6-5 if Harbaugh was there this season. I mean, it's a hypothetical, but like with McCarthy and Corum and Sanders still and all these guys that they lost to the draft, it's like, who's to say they would be any better if Harbaugh was there? So it's the other part of this, but what you thinking about?
I'm not thinking about much. I pulled up a little bit of basketball.
You looked like you were scratching that lip there, like you had something here.
No, I don't know. I think there's a bigger and a better M kind of taking over right now, and they're eclipsing. I think Minnesota is eclipsing Michigan this season, and
in football prowess.
Is PJ Fleck wrong to think that? He's probably not thinking that right now, but that.
When did he say he's eclipsing Michigan?
No, he would never say that. He's too busy tying his tie. I'm just saying, I'm saying for him on behalf. I don't know. They'll have to play a Little Brown Jug game again.
Not this
year. What am I saying? All right. Anything else?
No, that's it. Let's go into a little basketball here.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, it's Tuesday night. Those playoffs, just that bracket, all that stuff just dropped. People will continue to talk and fodder over those things. Talking hoops though, Big Ten hoops right now. There are 3 teams right now who are still undefeated overall. The Wisconsin Badgers 7-0, Oregon Ducks 6-0, and the Indiana Hoosiers 4-0. So 3 teams who have always been pretty good basketball schools over time, continuing to stay good. And then right behind at 6-1 is Iowa Hawkeyes and Penn State. Okay, so lots of really, really good basketball being played. In fact, every team right now in the Big Ten has only lost 0, 1, or 2 games, right? Everyone has won at least 4 games, so no one's in the red. really good start to the season for out of conference. And as these teams start to take off, are on flights right now, or landing all around these tropical places to play for Bad Boys Mowers or Maui Jim Maui's or whatever it may be, we're going to see some good basketball. Okay. And I do want to point out the Northwestern Wildcats are going to play my Butler Bulldogs this upcoming week. Last time the Butler Bulldogs played Northwestern, Kamar Baldwin, buzzer beater game winner on the court at Hinkle. Okay, pretty impressive stuff. So we'll
When
see
was
what
that?
happens. I think that was freshman year, dude. I think that was 2016, 20, maybe 2017,
Yeah,
the winter of
after.
2017,
Yeah, it's been a minute.
or actually that. Either way, man. Yeah,
This is a
it has
different.
been.
This is a different. This is the post Boo Booey era. That was pre Boo Booey.
I know. Well, and this is a very post Kamar Baldwin era at Butler. The reality is,
They are calling Welsh Ryan Arena the house that Boo built.
they do. They do. I got a coworker who would say that too.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They had never made the tournament until he showed up, and they made it like 3 years in a row.
Oh, dude. He's incredible.
Yeah.
Brought so much life. What I'm trying to say is all these teams are going out. They've had really good starts to the season. No one is hitting like the panic button yet by any means, so that's super exciting. But we're going to turn the corner here soon enough, and these teams are going to start playing each other week in, week out, and we'll start to see some real contests, right? So I would not be shocked to see some of these higher scoring games. Like I know last night Ohio State scored like 102 points against Green Bay. We're not going to continue to see that stuff happen once we get into the conference. But regardless, the boys are hooping.
Yeah, this is a fun week. We were talking about this a week or two ago that we're in a lot of these preseason tournaments right now. Obviously, Maui Jim, we showed some love to a little bit. That's always been like my favorite one. A little less fun without Bill Walton. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
He was always on the commentary crew there, and that always made that a lot of fun.
I was going to say,
the way
there has to be somewhere on YouTube where it's just like clips of him.
Oh, I'm sure. That. Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Walton at the Maui Gym. The way he'd always say Maui Gym. Just still a fun tournament. Michigan State was out there for that one. They actually just lost tonight to Memphis in the semifinals for that one.
71-63.
Yep. So they'll be going consolation. But some other big teams in some of these tournaments. You got Indiana's in the battle for Atlantis. They kick off that tomorrow versus Louisville. We'll see how they do out there. And then we got a couple teams in the Players Era Festival. Rutgers is there right now, and Oregon is there as well. Picked up a dub versus a ranked Texas A&M team earlier today as well.
Yeah, so, number 20 Texas A&M.
Yeah. So
by 10.
Showing up well out of conference. It's a fun week for college basketball. You got a team like Wisconsin that I don't think was in one of these tournaments that has already played 7 games. And then I know just because talking with coworkers being located where I am, Iowa State, not a Big Ten team, but they'd only played like 3 games until this week. Now they got 3 in 3 days with the Maui Gym tournament. So schedules are varying wildly, but
yeah, and you can see some bench players, you can see some random names start to pop out, and you start to see really what the depth of these teams look like. Tomorrow we got depending on we don't know who Michigan State's going to play yet, but we'll have 7 games, including whoever the Michigan State plays for that consolation. So Wednesday's got a ton of games, and we got plenty more basketball to watch as the week goes on. And I don't want to say that I want to take the favorites in all these things. Xavier's a great team, but that Michigan Xavier game tomorrow, Wednesday, and that Rutgers Alabama game, 2 really fun ones.
Yeah. I think a really fun one, Thanksgiving Day. You got the Thanksgiving Hoops Showcase down in Kansas City. It's kind of become a big thing every year. Arkansas playing Illinois. Arkansas first year with Calipari down there. And then an Illinois team that we've seen make some deep tournament runs now in the last few years. Ranked last week, lost a game, fell out, but still kind of on the cusp there. Be interesting to see how they match up on Thanksgiving afternoon. And then, we'll see. Iowa got the win tonight. I was watching that at dinner for a little bit. Playing.
Yeah, they balled out too.
South Carolina upstate. So you'd hope you win that one, which they did.
110 points.
That Iowa offense just
That's a lot of Nuggets.
giving up 77 though. Defense still where the question marks will lie with the Hawkeyes.
Hey, a win's a win. Whoa, a win's. That's all I'm gonna say.
Take a look
Anything
at
else?
yeah. We'll take a look at the women's side of everything here too. There's some with these new additions into the Big Ten this year.
Yeah.
You got Juju Watkins out at USC, and that's going to be one
Yeah.
of those Big Ten Peacock games. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
UCLA ranked team, and the Iowa Hawkeyes, even without Caitlin Clark, snuck their way into the rankings this week. Sitting at 22, I think. So maybe a bit of an omen there with CC's old number. We'll see.
Spooky for sure.
But the Big Ten in women's ball is dominating the top 25. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the top 25 are out of the Big Ten right now. So
and three of those are in the top 10, including number 1, number 6, and number 10 themselves.
yeah,
So I mean, yeah, if you didn't see that USC knock off UCLA in a historical fashion, Dawn Staley tasted a loss for the first time in who knows how long, or whatever the deal is with her. Good for her though; she's a great coach. But bada bing, bada boom, the Bruins are here to stay, right? And so that's super fun. Juju Watkins is super fun too. We're gonna be super excited to watch that girls matchup of the crosstown rivalry out there.
Yeah,
in South.
I think they do it twice this year. This new Big Ten schedule is weird. Like you play every team once and you get one team twice, and I think they paired up USC, UCLA as they should.
As it should.
Yeah.
As they should. They should.
Home and home.
Simple.
Yep.
These are people's communities that they care about.
All right.
Good
Anything
stuff.
else you got?
No, not really. I don't think so. We'll just keep it coming as basketball starts to turn around, and soon enough, I'm sure we'll be talking spring sports. But yet, we still have bowls to come out, and I can't wait for our next episode or whenever we get our episode coming out when we start to figure out actual bowl game placements, right? And start talking that. So
pick them. We'll be coming at you.
Yeah. So still got some ball left to play. Still trying out new different formats. Love hearing what people have to say about the formats. No, last week was pretty long, but people still enjoyed the kind of review and stuff. So, man, we're open to anything. And if you want to call in, if you really are serious about things, if you want to hear something, let us know. Reach out to us on Instagram. Hit us on YouTube. Hit the likes, all those things. We appreciate all of it. We just hit 50 followers the other day, so that's huge, actually. Talking first 50 people. That's ground floor, people. Welcome.
Yeah. Milestone episode, milestone followers.
Yeah.
We're checking the boxes here, so feels good. With that, we'll sign off here. Happy Thanksgiving to all the listeners. If you're traveling, safe travels. It's going to be cold here in the Midwest. I don't know if you've looked at the forecast. It's going to be very chilly this weekend. So stay warm and enjoy your turkey and stuffing, whatever else you got on the Thanksgiving spread this Thursday. Lock in for some good football and basketball. Special time of year.
Totally special time of year. And just know, if someone's on your nerves, they don't know ball like you know ball.
We're getting you there updated. Yep. We'll see you next week.